So we're ready now to follow the story that Hesiod tells us about the birth of the universe, the birth of the cosmos. Again, if it sounds strange to think about the universe being born out of nothing, remember that in the ancient world, and for that matter, you and me, today, we explain things in terms of what we already understand. When we try to explain something we haven't thought about before, we try to explain it in terms of what we've already understood. And in the ancient world, everybody knew where life came from, okay? There's this birthing process of some sort. Figuring out where babies came from was one of the first discoveries, okay? So this birthing process is a natural place to go to look for a picture, for a way of explaining where things come from. It really shouldn't surprise us all of that much. Well, according to Hesiod, who's simply reporting what the story that he's grown up with, okay? Or at least one of the stories he's grown up with. He's got a completely different story that we'll get to. But one of the stories he grows up with is that out of emptiness is born these 5 very animistic gods. Firstborn is Gaia. Gaia is just the Greek word that means earth. Then is born Tartarus. Tartarus is just the Greek word that means the underworld. Then is born Erebus, which is Greek for darkness. Nux, the Greek word for night. And Eros, desirous love. Okay, that's where we get the word erotic from. We get the word geology, geography from Gaia, for example. These are all just the Greek words for these powerful forces. The earth, the underworld, darkness, night, desirous love. Okay. 2 things to point out as far as we've gotten. First of all, what's missing? We've got earth, the underworld, darkness, night, desirous love. Okay, what are we missing? We're missing daytime, and we're missing light, right? They had to come from somewhere. But we've got this odd thing, eros, desirous love. Why do we need to have eros right at the start of things? Okay, we're back to where we started, all right? We understand where babies come from. We have to have some kind of erotic desire, some kind of desirous love to get the process of birthing started, okay? It kind of makes sense. I'm not saying I believe it or that you should believe it. I'm saying it does kind of make sense when you think about it. And so Eros does the desirous love thing, and Erebus and darkness in some kind of erotic mingling of some sort, some kind of sexual, I don't know, some kind of mingling, produce the day, light and day. So on the screen we see what's in effect kind of a family tree, although it's a very small family and the tree doesn't have lots of branches at this point. But out of chaos is born these 5 animistic gods. And to make things even more confusing for us, this Greek word that we translate chaos, chasm, chasmerto, is actually gender neuter in the Greek language. So it's neither masculine nor feminine, as if we needed more confusion at this point. But chaos up here, out of chaos, the emptiness, the void, the yawn, the big cosmic yawn, is born these 5 animistic creatures. Gaia, the earth, Tartarus, the underworld is called the abyss here, that's fine. Eros, desirous love, Erebus, darkness, and night over here. Well, Erebus and Nux, or Nyx it's called here, that's fine too. Erebus and Nux, darkness and night, mingle in some sort of erotic activity, some kind of sexual activity, and give birth to light and day. Again, very animistic beings. Our next step is that Gaia, the earth, out of Gaia, she gives birth to 3 animistic beings. Uranus, the sky, Urea, the mountains, and Pontus, the sea. And then Gaia and Uranus are going to be erotically, sexually linked in some way. I know, it's gross, alright? But there's a shallow gene pool, alright? This is the dating scene There's not a lot of options out there. Okay. Now, Gaia gives birth to these three beings, and then mingles sexually, mingles erotically, mingles in desire with Uranus, the sky. And that's where we just were, okay. In what is called the first of a sacred marriage between a sky god and an earth god. The Greek word for this phrase is the Hieros, Gamos. We're going to be seeing three of these, sacred marriages between the male sky, usually a male sky, and a female earth. That's the typical pattern. Typically, among ancient peoples, we have one of these sacred marriages, or as we'll see in Greek mythology, a series of these sacred marriages between a male sky and a female earth. Now, I know some of this is pretty earthy, kind of earthy conversation here, okay? But why is the earth female? Think about that for a second. Why do we have a female earth? Because vegetation comes out of the earth. The earth is what produces vegetation, okay? And if we're taking our basic model of where things come from to be human birth, then it kind of makes sense to see the earth as female, and then to see the sky as male. Why is the sky male? Because rain falls from the sky. Rain falls upon the fertile earth. Even you and I use words like fertility to describe agriculture, right? That we say that particular type of soil is very fertile because it produces good crops, all right? Even you and I use words like this, okay? And the rain falls on the earth, all right? The rain from the sky, which is kind of like, I know, it's kind of earthy stuff, all right? It's kind of like semen, okay? The rain falls on the earth produces food, all right? And so typically, one of these Hieros, Gamos, these sacred marriages is between a male sky and a female earth. We see this pattern pretty much all over the ancient world, with, well, I guess two notable exceptions. One place where we don't see this at all, we'll get to those people, if you haven't guessed, the ancient Hebrew people. We don't have any of this male sky, female earth kind of nonsense going on. And we also don't see it in ancient Egypt. On the screen, you see a picture of the Egyptian Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage that the ancient Egyptians talked about. But pretty obviously, we have down here a male earth god, which is what we have in ancient Egypt, and a female sky god, which we have up here, which is the Egyptian Hieros Gamos. Well, the Greeks always said the Egyptians got everything backwards. When the Greeks write about the Egyptians, they say the Egyptians got everything backwards. In fact, that's almost a quote from Herodotus, a Greek historian who is writing about 300 BC, and he writes a history of the world, and he says about the Egyptians that the Egyptians get everything backwards, and as his first point of evidence that the Egyptians get everything backwards, he says that for some stupid reason they've got a male earth god and a female sky god. Everybody knows it's supposed to be the other way around. Well, there are differences, for example, among the ancient Hebrew people, and we'll say some things about their view of creation in a little bit. But at least the Egyptians got things wrong. Okay, and so we have the first of these Hieros Gamos, the first sacred marriage between Gaia and Uranus, between the female earth god and the male sky god. This marriage is going to produce a series of three groups of children. The first of these groups, the Hekatonchires. You say that really fast and you just hope you get it right. Hekatonchires. Hekaton is the Greek word for 100. Chires is the Greek word for hand. Like a chiropractor is one who uses their hands to manipulate the joints of the body, especially among the spine. Comes from the Greek word chires, of hands. The Hekatonchires, the 100-handers. Okay, these are horribly hideous creatures. They're the first creature that Gaia gives birth to after mingling erotically with Uranus. Well, these are hideously ugly children. Uranus is scandalized that Gaia has given birth to these horribly ugly children. There are thousands of them. And so he banishes them to the underworld. He sends them down to Tartarus, the underworld, where they wander among the caves and crevices of the underworld. Gaia and Uranus mingle erotically again and produce the Cyclopes, the Cyclops. Cyclopes is technically the Greek plural of Cyclop, but hardly anybody says Cyclopes. They usually say Cyclops. They're both okay in English. The Cyclopes, these are big scary monsters with one eye in the middle of their forehead, and one of you is going to jump out of your chair and say, wait a second, didn't Professor Manley tell us that Poseidon is the father of the Cyclops, and now he's telling us Uranus is the father of the Cyclops? Yes. 2 different stories, 2 different purposes. Okay? Get used to it. You try to work too much out of your Logos, you're going to become mad. You're going to go insane. Okay? In this story, Uranus is the father of all the Cyclops. In Homer's story of the Odyssey, Poseidon is the father of the Cyclops. Well, Poseidon is a sea god, and sea gods have to give birth to, or have to procreate, and have to produce weird monsters. And that's why Homer says Poseidon is the father of the Cyclops. We'll talk about sea monsters and why sea monsters have to give birth to scary monster god as children's and all that kind of stuff. Well, these are scary, ugly creatures too, and so Uranus banishes them to the Cyclops. And then Gaia begins to give birth, after another little erotic mingling between Uranus and Gaia, a series of minglings, begins to give birth to the Titans. But here we're going to see the story shift and shift in a pretty dramatic way.